Admiral James Sullivan stood at the window of Earth's Orbital Defense Command, watching the massive Tellarite warship shimmer into existence against the backdrop of stars. Its crystalline hull bore the scars of recent battles, telling a story of desperate retreat even before its occupants spoke a word. 20 years into humanity's venture into space, and this was their first contact with a truly advanced civilization, one running for its life. "They're hailing us again, sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from her communications station. "The Tellarite High Command is requesting immediate audience with Earth's military leadership." Sullivan straightened his uniform. Humanity had barely established colonies on Mars and Europa, yet here was an alien civilization crossing light years to seek their help. The preliminary briefings had painted a grim picture. The Tellarites, despite their advanced technology, were losing a war of extinction against the Nexar Empire. The meeting chamber was a stark contrast of cultures. The Tellarite delegation, led by First Speaker Van Cor, moved with liquid grace in their environment suits. Their crystalline technology made Earth's best equipment look like children's toys, yet they came as supplicants. "Your species," Cor began, his translator converting musical tones into English, "has achieved something remarkable. In merely 2 centuries, you've progressed from primitive combustion engines to basic space travel. But more importantly, you've maintained your warrior spirit." Sullivan exchanged glances with General Maria Patel, Earth's highest-ranking ground forces commander. "With respect, First Speaker, we're hardly warriors anymore. Earth hasn't seen a major conflict in decades." "Precisely." Cor's eye membranes flickered with what Sullivan would later learn was excitement. "You still remember war. The Nexar have fought the same way for 10,000 years. We Tellarites haven't faced real conflict in even longer. We've lost the ability to think like warriors, to adapt, to surprise." Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the devastating losses the Tellarites had suffered. Entire solar systems reduced to debris fields, billions of lives lost. The Nexar Empire's perfectly coordinated fleets moved with mechanical precision, overwhelming all resistance through sheer computational efficiency. "Your military history fascinates us," Cor continued. "Your guerrilla warfare, your asymmetric conflicts, your ability to triumph against superior forces. We don't seek your technology, Admiral Sullivan. We seek your minds." General Patil leaned forward. "You want human military advisors. We want human commanders," Cor corrected. "We offer full control of Tellarite battle groups to your military leadership. Our technology, your strategies. It's our only hope." The implications were staggering. Humanity, barely able to reach its own solar system's edge, would be given command of ships that could cross galaxies. The responsibility was enormous, the potential for disaster infinite. "The Nexar cannot be reasoned with," Cor added softly. "They expand, they consume, they optimize. Every civilization they encounter becomes a calculation. Assimilate or eradicate. We were deemed too independent for assimilation." Sullivan walked to the window, looking at the battle-scarred Tellarite ship. "How many other species have you approached for help?" "None. Our predictive matrices showed that more advanced civilizations would either refuse or attempt to conquer us themselves. Less advanced ones wouldn't comprehend our technology quickly enough. You are unique, advanced enough to understand, primitive enough to still think creatively about warfare, and ethical enough to be trusted." The room fell silent. Humanity's first major role on the galactic stage would be as warriors, not explorers or diplomats. The irony was not lost on Sullivan. "If we agree," General Patel spoke carefully, "we'll need to understand everything about both sides' capabilities. No holding back. We can't command effectively if you keep technological secrets." "Agreed." Cor's translator rendered his tone as relieved. "We anticipated this. Our ship carries complete technical databases and training systems adapted for human learning patterns." Sullivan turned back to the room. Earth's greatest challenge and opportunity had arrived from the stars. They would have to be careful, Even with advanced technology, they'd be fighting an uphill battle against an enemy that had conquered hundreds of star systems. "We'll need to select our best," he said finally. "Not just military leaders, but tacticians, strategists, historians, and unconventional warfare experts. And we'll need to move fast." Kor's body language shifted to what Sullivan would come to recognize as hope. "The Nexar are 3 months from breaking through our last major defense line. After that, they have a clear path to Earth. Your planet's existence is no longer a secret. The Nexar will come eventually, whether you help us or not." The choice was clear. Humanity would fight, not just for the Tellarites, but for their own future among the stars. As Sullivan looked at the assembled human and alien leaders, he knew this was the moment everything changed. First Speaker Kor. Sullivan straightened to his full height. "Earth accepts your proposal. Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do." 3 weeks of intensive training had transformed the Tellarite flagship Crystalline Dawn into something unprecedented, a warship commanded by humans. Admiral Sullivan watched from the bridge as Commander Rajesh Patel, no relation to the general, ran another combat drill. The Tellarite crew had initially been skeptical of such primitive exercises, but their doubt was fading fast. Hostile contact, bearing 37 Mark II. Lieutenant Commander Isabella Torres called from her tactical station. The simulation projected a Nexar battle group emerging from hyperspace, their formations perfect as always. "Initiate Protocol Thunderstorm," Rajesh ordered calmly. Instead of meeting the Nexar head-on as Tellarite doctrine demanded, the Crystalline Dawn and its escort ships scattered in seemingly random directions. The Nexar ships, programmed to counter traditional Tellarite tactics, struggled to adjust their optimal firing solutions. Sullivan nodded in satisfaction. The Nexar's greatest strength, their computational perfection, was becoming their weakness. Human commanders had introduced chaos theory into space warfare, making battles too complex for even the Nexar's advanced battle computers to predict effectively. "They're dividing their forces," Torres reported with a hint of satisfaction. "Pursuing individual targets as expected." "Execute Phase 2, Rajesh commanded. The scattered Tellarite ships suddenly reversed course, their paths creating a complex web of crossfire zones. In the simulation, 3 Nexar cruisers found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire, their perfect formations becoming perfect targets. "Remarkable," First Speaker Kor observed from his position near Sullivan. "In all our centuries of warfare, we never considered deliberately introducing tactical entropy into battle plans." Sullivan watched as the simulation concluded with a decisive victory for the combined human Tellarite force. Sometimes the best move in chess isn't the most obvious one. Humanity learned that the hard way through centuries of warfare. But implementing new strategies was only part of the challenge. The real test came a week later when the Nexar launched their expected offensive against the Tellarite border world of Haven's Ring. This time, it wasn't a simulation. The Crystalline Dawn led a flotilla of 40 ships, all commanded by human officers working with Tellarite crews. Sullivan had chosen this system carefully. Its complex asteroid fields and intense radiation belts would help mask their movements. "Nexar fleet emerging from hyperspace," Torres announced, counting 76 capital ships in standard optimization pattern Delta. "Begin Operation Chaotic Thunder," Sullivan ordered. Across the flotilla, human commanders implemented the strategies they'd been drilling for weeks. Ships vanished into the asteroid field, using the Tellarite's advanced stealth technology in ways their creators had never imagined. The Nexar response was predictable, because humans had predicted their programming. Their ships split into mathematical search patterns, spreading out to maximize coverage. It was perfectly logical, and exactly what Sullivan had counted on. "They're approaching the radiation belt," Rajesh reported. "All ships in position." Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. "Execute." The asteroid field erupted. Tellarite ships emerged from hiding places the Nexar's algorithms had dismissed as too risky. The radiation belt, which should have hindered targeting, became a weapon itself as specially modified Tellerate sensors used the interference patterns to improve accuracy rather than suffer from them. Multiple direct hits, Torres called out. Nexar formations are breaking down. Their response times are lagging by 0.3 seconds. They are trying to compute too many variables. The battle that followed would become legendary in both human and Tellerate military academies. The Nexar lost 23 capital ships before retreating, their first major defeat in centuries. More importantly, their aura of invincibility had been shattered. Analysis confirms it, Core reported hours later in the tactical center. The Nexar attempted to adapt their algorithms during the battle, but our chaotic tactics prevented them from establishing reliable pattern recognition. They fought perfectly and lost. Sullivan studied the battle recordings. They'll adapt eventually. We need to keep changing our strategies, stay unpredictable. Humanity's greatest military advantage has always been our ability to innovate. We've already begun implementing similar command structures across our remaining fleets, Core said. But the Nexar will return in greater numbers. Let them come, Sullivan replied, pulling up plans for their next operation. The more ships they commit, the more resources they risk. We're not just fighting battles anymore. We're fighting a war of attrition against an enemy that doesn't understand waste. The victory at Haven's Ring marked a turning point. For the first time in decades, the Tellerates had hope. But Sullivan knew this was just the beginning. The Nexar would analyze this defeat endlessly, trying to optimize their response. They would return with new tactics, new formations, new calculations. But they would still be thinking like machines, and that was their greatest weakness. Humanity had brought something the galaxy had forgotten: the beautiful unpredictability of organic warfare. As Sullivan looked at the battle plans spreading across his tactical display, he knew the real war was just beginning. "Send word to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them to accelerate the training programs. We're going to need every creative military mind we can get." The holographic display aboard the Crystalline Dawn filled the war room with a ghostly blue light as Dr. Natasha Volkov reviewed combat footage for the 100th time. As Earth's leading expert in artificial intelligence patterns, she'd been studying Nexar battle tactics for months, searching for something everyone else had missed. "There," she muttered, freezing a frame showing the Nexar dreadnought's energy signature during the Battle of Haven's Ring. "Admiral Sullivan, do you see it?" Sullivan leaned forward, squinting at the complex data patterns. "I'm afraid you'll have to enlighten me, Doctor." "Watch their shield harmonics during our chaotic attack patterns." She highlighted a sequence of energy fluctuations. Their adaptive algorithms follow a truncated Fibonacci sequence when stressed. It's beautiful, really, and absolutely predictable. First Speaker Core's translator harmonized with confusion. "We've analyzed their shield patterns for centuries. They adapt randomly within computational parameters." "No," Natasha smiled, expanding the display. "That's what they want everyone to think. But look deeper. Their randomness is an illusion. Their entire computational architecture is built on mathematical perfection, which means it can't generate true randomness. They're using an incredibly complex pattern, but it's still a pattern." Sullivan felt a familiar surge of excitement. Every major human military victory in history had come from finding the one weakness enemies thought they didn't have. "Can we exploit this?" "Better." Natasha's fingers danced across the holographic controls. "We can use it to predict their entire battle network's behavior. Their ships don't just fight together. They think together. Each vessel's quantum computing core synchronizes with the others. Perfect coordination, but also a perfect vulnerability." Core finished, his crystalline form shifting colors with revelation. "If we can predict one ship's patterns, we can predict them all," Natasha confirmed. "Give me 2 more weeks with your quantum engineers, and I can design a system that will let us see their moves before they make them." The implications were staggering. While human commanders had been introducing chaos into their tactics, the Nexar had been responding with increasingly complex mathematical patterns, making themselves more predictable to anyone who could crack their code. But implementing Natash's discovery proved challenging. The Tellerate quantum engineers struggled to merge their crystalline technology with her theoretical models. Days stretched into weeks as they worked to create a predictive system that could process the massive amounts of data in real time. The challenge, Natasha explained to Sullivan one evening, is that we're basically trying to outcompute an enemy that turned entire stars into computational cores. We can't match their processing power, but we can anticipate their patterns. It's like a chess grandmaster reading their opponent's strategy several moves ahead. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Commander Torres, studying ancient human military history, suggested incorporating game theory from Cold War nuclear strategies. The Nexer think in binary, optimize or eliminate. But what if we force them to consider multiple contradictory optimizations simultaneously? The first test of their new system came sooner than expected. A Nexer battle fleet, larger than any seen before, emerged from hyperspace near the Tellerate colony of New Haven. 86 capital ships, each one a city-sized engine of destruction, arranged in their familiar perfect formations. Predictive system online, Natasha announced from her newly installed station on the bridge. Receiving quantum data feeds from all friendly vessels. Pattern recognition algorithms running. Sullivan watched as new tactical overlays appeared on his display, showing probability maps of Nexer movements before they happened. It was like seeing the future, a future written in mathematics so perfect it became predictable. All ships, implement Protocol Pythagoras, Sullivan ordered. Across the human Tellerate fleet, commanders began executing the carefully planned strategy. Ships moved in patterns designed not just to attack the Nexer, but to force them into specific response algorithms. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human commanders, guided by Natasha's predictive system, positioned their ships not where the enemy was, but where they would be forced to go. The Nexer's responses, bound by their own mathematical perfection, became their undoing. Their formation is fracturing, Torres reported with barely contained excitement. Central Computing Core is attempting to establish new optimization parameters. Now, Sullivan ordered, all ships execute Operation Logic Bomb. The combined fleet launched a synchronized attack that exploited the brief vulnerability when Nexer ships transitioned between tactical patterns. Quantum-tipped missiles flipped through temporarily predictable shield harmonics. Energy beams found focusing crystals at exactly the right millisecond of recalibration. The Nexer fleet, for the first time in known history, fell into genuine chaos. Without their perfect coordination, their superior technology became a liability rather than an advantage. Ship after ship fell to the precisely timed human assault. They're retreating, Core announced, his crystalline form pulsing with victory lights. Confirmed kills. 32 capital ships. No losses on our side. This changes everything. Sullivan turned to Natasha, who was still absorbed in her quantum readings. Doctor, I believe you just helped us turn the tide of this war. She looked up, her expression serious. This was just the beginning, Admiral. They'll try to adapt their patterns, make them more complex. But now that we understand their fundamental architecture, they can't escape their own perfection. Sullivan finished, and we'll be ready for whatever new pattern they devise. As the crew celebrated their victory, Sullivan began drafting his report to Earth Command. They had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers, but their ability to find patterns others missed, and the creativity to exploit them. The war was far from over, but for the first time, victory seemed possible. Send word to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Operation Perfect Storm begins in 48 hours. It's time to take this war to the enemy. Operation Perfect Storm began at precisely 300 Earth Standard Time. 200 Tellerate warships, each commanded by human officers, emerged from hyperspace at carefully calculated points across Nexer space. Admiral Sullivan stood aboard the Crystalline Dawn, watching as the largest coordinated offensive in galactic history unfolded. All battle groups reporting successful emergence. Lieutenant Commander Torres announced. No immediate Nexer response detected. They're about to face something their algorithms have never encountered, Sullivan said. A full-scale, multi-vector assault that exploits their own predictability. Dr. Volkov's predictive systems had been distributed throughout the fleet, giving every human commander the ability to anticipate Nexer responses. But this operation went beyond mere tactical advantage. It was designed to attack the very foundation of Nexer military doctrine. First Nexer response fleet detected, Torres reported, emerging exactly where Dr. Volkov predicted. 153 capital ships, divided into standard computational clusters. Sullivan allowed himself a grim smile. All ships, execute Phase 1. Let's show them what organized chaos looks like. The human-commanded fleet split into seemingly random groups, each executing tactics that appeared uncoordinated, but were actually part of an intricately designed plan. The Nexer, true to their programming, responded by dividing their forces to engage each group optimally. Their quantum networks are activating, Dr. Volkov called from her station. They're attempting to establish superior computational dominance through distributed processing. Exactly as planned, Sullivan nodded. Execute Phase 2. Across the battlefield, human commanders initiated carefully planned maneuvers that forced Nexer ships to draw more heavily on their shared quantum network. Each engagement was designed not just to win tactical victories, but to strain the enemy's cognitive infrastructure. Commander Rajesh's voice crackled over the command channel. Battle Group 7 reporting success. Nexer ships are showing increasing response latency. Their network is becoming saturated. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than trying to outfight the Nexer, they were forcing them to think themselves into gridlock. Each human-led attack required such complex computational responses that the Nexer battle network became overwhelmed trying to calculate optimal solutions. Sir, Torres called out, excitement bleeding through her professional tone. We're detecting cascade failures in their quantum communication network. Their ships are starting to operate independently. This was the moment Sullivan had been waiting for. All ships, execute Phase 3. Target their command and control nodes. The human Tellarite fleet suddenly shifted from apparent chaos to perfect coordination. Ships that had seemed to be retreating now turned to attack. Forces that appeared isolated revealed themselves to be perfectly positioned for devastating strikes. Without their unified quantum network, the Nexer lost their greatest advantage. Individual ships, isolated from the collective, fell back on basic protocols that were painfully predictable to the human commanders. Confirmed destruction of 37 Nexer capital ships, Torres reported. Their formation is collapsing across all sectors. First Speaker Corps' crystalline form, pulsed with victory lights. In all our history, we never imagined such a victory possible. You've turned their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. But Sullivan knew better than to celebrate too early. Status of Phase 4 preparations. Ready, Admiral, Dr. Volkov responded. The virus is prepared for upload the moment they try to rebuild their quantum network. This was the true masterstroke of Operation Perfect Storm. When the Nexer inevitably attempted to restore their computational advantage, they would unknowingly accept a quantum virus designed by Dr. Volkov and the Tellarite engineers. It would spread through their entire command structure, inserting minute errors into their supposedly perfect calculations. Nexer forces are initiating major network reboot, Volkov announced. Quantum signatures detected across all remaining ships. Upload the virus, Sullivan ordered. All ships, prepare for final engagement. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Nexer ships, their perfect calculations now subtly corrupted, began making minute errors that compounded with each new combat solution. Their formations became slightly misaligned, their timing marginally off, their targeting solutions increasingly inaccurate. This is incredible, Volkov breathed, watching her displays. The errors are propagating exponentially. Their entire tactical doctrine is unraveling. The Nexer, faced with failure beyond their programming's ability to comprehend, began to retreat, not in the calculated withdrawal they were known for, but in genuine disarray. Ship after ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of their once invincible fleet. Victory confirmed in all sectors, Torres announced, her voice steady despite the historical magnitude of the moment. 89 Nexer capital ships destroyed or disabled. Their remaining forces are in full retreat. Sullivan looked around the bridge at the mixed human and Tellarite crew, all united in this unprecedented triumph. Send word to all commands. Operation Perfect Storm is a success. The Nexer invasion fleet has been broken. But even as the crew celebrated, Sullivan's mind was already on the next phase. The Nexer would adapt, try to purge the virus, develop new protocols. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, the end was in sight. First speaker, he turned to Core. It's time to implement the final phase of our strategy. The Nexer have never faced defeat on this scale. Their response will tell us everything we need to know about their true nature. Core's translator harmonized with determination. Whatever comes next, you've proven that the impossible is possible. Humanity has given us back our future. Sullivan nodded, already reviewing reports from across the battlefield. They had won a decisive victory, but experience had taught humanity that such moments were often the most dangerous. The real test would be what came next, and whether the Nexer were capable of learning the one lesson they had never faced before: how to lose. 3 days after Operation Perfect Storm, Admiral Sullivan stood in the quantum communications chamber aboard the Crystalline Dawn, facing something unprecedented: a direct transmission from the Nexer High Command. The crystalline walls shimmered with incoming data as the connection established. They're actually willing to talk, Dr. Volkov marveled, monitoring the quantum signatures. In all recorded history, the Nexer have never initiated diplomatic contact after engaging in warfare. The holographic image that formed was both beautiful and alien, a being of pure energy contained within a geometrically perfect crystalline matrix. When it spoke, its words were translated simultaneously by both Tellarite and human systems. "We are Nexar Prime," the entity stated. "You have accomplished what we calculated to be impossible. Our perfect system has failed." Sullivan stepped forward. "I am Admiral James Sullivan, representing both Earth and our Tellarite allies. We're prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict." Terms. Nexar Prime's energy patterns flickered in what might have been confusion. "Our protocols contain no contingency for defeat. This scenario exists outside all projected possibilities." "That's exactly why we won," Dr. Volkov interjected. "Your pursuit of computational perfection made you predictable. Human unpredictability, combined with our ability to recognize patterns, let us see what you couldn't." The Nexer entity seemed to pulse with new understanding. "We have analyzed your species extensively since our defeat. Your biological computation methods are inferior, your technology primitive, your social structures chaotic. Yet you achieved what no other species has done in 50,000 years. Because we understand something you don't," Sullivan replied. "Perfect efficiency isn't always the best solution. Sometimes chaos and imperfection lead to better results than pure logic." What followed was the most extraordinary diplomatic exchange in galactic history. The Nexer, faced with the failure of their fundamental principles, did something truly unprecedented. They asked questions, not to gather tactical data, but to understand. First Speaker Core watched in amazement as human diplomats and scientists engaged in profound discussions with the Nexer about the nature of consciousness, the value of imperfection, and the power of creative thinking. The Nexer, it turned out, were not just a machine empire. They were an ancient organic species that had gradually replaced their biological components in pursuit of perfection. "We believed organic life was inherently flawed," Nexer Prime explained. "Each iteration of our enhancement protocols moved us further from chaos toward mathematical purity. But you have demonstrated that this was an error in our fundamental calculations." Dr. Volkov leaned forward. Your pursuit of perfection became a different kind of flaw. By eliminating chaos completely, you lost the ability to truly innovate. The negotiations that followed transformed the galaxy. The Nexer, their worldview shattered by defeat, proposed something radical. They wanted to learn from humanity, not to assimilate or destroy, but to understand how imperfection and adaptation could lead to superior outcomes. "We propose a new protocol," Nexer Prime announced. "A merger of approaches. Our computational efficiency combined with your creative chaos. An exchange of knowledge." Sullivan looked at his assembled team, human and Tellarite alike, and saw the potential. "We accept with conditions. All conquered territories must be restored to their original inhabitants. The Tellarites and other species must be free to choose their own path." The peace treaty that emerged reshaped galactic civilization. The Nexer began a gradual process of reintegrating organic elements into their society, while sharing their advanced technology with both humans and Tellarites. Research centers were established where the three species could work together, combining their different approaches to problem-solving. 1 year later, Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the newly established Galactic Cooperation Center, watching ships from all three civilizations moving peacefully through space. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when the Tellarites first arrived at Earth?" Dr. Volkov asked, joining him at the window. Sullivan shook his head. "We thought we were joining a war of survival. Instead, we ended up teaching one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy about the importance of being imperfect." First Speaker Core approached, his crystalline form now incorporating some Nexer technology. "The galaxy is changing faster than anyone predicted. The Nexer are already implementing organic randomness generators in their new ships, and our own people are learning to balance tradition with innovation. And humanity." Dr. Volkov smiled. "We're finally learning to balance our chaos with some useful efficiency." Sullivan watched as a Nexer ship executed a slightly imperfect docking maneuver, deliberately introducing small variations into its approach pattern. The sight would have been unthinkable a year ago. The real victory wasn't defeating the Nexer, he realized. It was proving that different approaches can coexist. Perfect efficiency, organic creativity, and traditional wisdom, all working together. As he looked out at the combined fleet, Sullivan reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage as warriors, but would be remembered as teachers. They had shown that victory sometimes meant more than winning. It meant helping your enemy become something better. "We all had something to learn," he said finally. "The Nexer learned about imperfection, the Tellarites about adaptation, and we learned that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to fight, but our ability to change and help others change too." The stars stretched out before them, no longer a battlefield but a frontier of possibilities. In the end, humanity's greatest victory hadn't come from superior firepower or perfect strategies, but from their unique ability to embrace chaos while recognizing patterns, and their willingness to share that wisdom with the galaxy.